Church, welcome to the Bridge. It's great to have you with us this morning. I know some of you are still walking in. Welcome. Welcome to those online. If you're new with us, my name is Chris and I am on staff here. And I'm just thrilled to have you with us this morning. We know you could be doing a lot of things on a Sunday, but we're honored that you spend an hour of your time with us. If you are newer with us, we're going to have some songs that we're going to kick things off with. And then our lead pastor, Pastor Scott Landry, is going to be in week 2 of his series called Confessions of a Pastor, an honest look at a pastor's heart. If you are new with us, again, one gigantic welcome to you, especially if you're watching online as well. We'd love to get to know you a little bit. Reach out through the screen. Let us know you're out there. The best way to do that is to go to our website, and right on the main page, you will see a New Here button. We'd love for you to click that. And if you're here in the room with us and you are newer, again, a gigantic welcome to you. We have a New Here kiosk out in the foyer, and that's just for you. We have someone there from our guest service team who would love to say hello to you, and they'd love to give you a gift. It's just a way to say thank you so much for being here today. But we're going to kick off, as I said, with some singing. So I'm going to invite you to stand up and sing along with the band. The words will be on the screen.
Oh, don't lose heart, oh my soul,
Amen. Go ahead and grab a seat. Well, it's hard to believe, but summer is here. I have my little one in the French school, and she is out for the summer already. Many of you have kids, some out already, some are going to be out this week. They have one more week left of school, and then they're out for the summer, and there's all sorts of chaos and fun that goes along with that. And yeah, it's just hard to believe it's already here. But we have lots of stuff going on around here as well that we would love for you to be a part of. First, we have kids camp coming up. I just want to let you know we are full. So if you're hoping that was like we have some more space, sorry, it is full. We have 200 kids coming here. Yeah, it's exciting, but pray for us. No, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be an awesome event. It's gonna be a lot of fun. If your kid has been here before for that, it is just one of the highlights of the year around here. An awesome opportunity to hang out with those guys and have some fun, to teach them about Jesus and invite their parents into that as well. It's an amazing event we do around here. So one, I want you to pray for it. That's coming up second week of July, and we just want you to be praying over that. Some of you have offered to volunteer to help out with that and be a station leader or a small group leader, and those are all awesome. Thank you so much if that's you. But we need some more help with some different things. We need some help in the tech area. One of the things we need help with as well is we're gonna have a week before then where we are just building stuff. We are gonna transform this place. Again, if you've ever been around here and we've done a kids camp before, we kind of go big. It's go big or go home, and we go big. So it is gonna be amazing in here. We're gonna transform this place, and we're just gonna make this an incredible experience for the little ones. If you have a little one, have you ever gone down the kids wing? You know that we don't just kind of stick up some posters and call it a day. Like, we go big, and we would love for you to be a part of it. So if you can swing a hammer, if you can paint, if you can do any of those types of things that would help us with the build, we would love for you to be a part of it. So please sign up to help out with that. The other thing we have starting up that we want you to know about is if you are in our student ministry, so it's the Well and Anchor, basically anywhere between grade 6 and grade 12, we have an amazing summer program for you called Live Loud. And this summer is all about having fun. It's all about building community and about taking risks. Basically, it's 8 weeks of awesomeness. And if you are in that age category, if you've got kids in that age category, if you've got friends with kids in that age category, make sure they know about it. We'd love for them to be a part of this, where they are just gonna go all out. The kickoff event is on July 6th, and we'd love for them to be a part of it. And again, throughout the entire summer. For information on that, for information on how to sign up to help out with the camp build or anything else, go to the top 3, the QR codes on the screen. You'll see a few around the church building as well. We would love for you to be a part of that. And again, if you're not involved in one of those, please be praying over both of those. It's an amazing time to engage with our kids and students this summer, and it's going to be incredible. And the other thing before we turn things over to Scott is I just want to thank you, those who give week after week, not only those who pray and just are bathing these events in prayer, but thank you those who give. We cannot make these things happen without you. We just can't. We don't charge enough for kids camp because we want kids to come in, kids who wouldn't necessarily have a camp to go to, kids who don't have to go to church regularly. We want to make it attainable for them. We're building bridges between them and their Lord and Savior. So we do this every year, and we do it because of people like you who give their time to volunteer, and we're able to do this because of people like you who are able to give financially. So thank you. Same thing with the student program this summer. We're able to do this amazing event all throughout the summer because of you and your generosity. So thank you so much. And of course, if you want to give, bridgechurches.ca/give, or you can go to the giving kiosk out in the foyer. But thank you so much. And I hope you realize what you do makes a difference. It's easy to just say, oh, I give because I'm supposed to, or I give because of whatever. But you may never step into either one of those ministries. You might not have a kid and that age, and you might just have no idea about either of those ministries. But I'll tell you, if you do have a kid in those areas, you've seen the difference it makes in their lives. It's one of the highlights of their summer. It's one of the greatest things that they've got going on, and it's just so exciting to be a part of it. So thank you so much. Well, with all that said, we're going to turn things over to Scott as he can talk a little bit more about confessions of a pastor. If you missed last week and some point during the week, I highly encourage you to check out the on-demand section of our website and check out last week's message. But I'm going to warn you, we're going to talk real talk, and it starts right now. Check it out.
Hi, Hi, how are you?
You have questions.
Yes, I have questions, you have questions, and rest assured, we're going to begin to answer them right now. Like, for example, I'm sure you want to know, are we really going to continue on with this sermon series this week?
Exactly.
I mean, especially after last week.
Yeah, so many people think they want their
Thank you so much for listening. Yes. I love this church.
Way too much time on our hands around here. I think that's a problem. That's just a glimpse into my weekly emails. So thanks for having a listen. Appreciate that. We began this series, Confessions of a Pastor, last week by talking about what I refer to as the pastor's mystique. For those of you that weren't here, the pastor's mystique is essentially this idea that there are people, maybe you don't think that your pastor or this pastor is perfect, but people do believe and expect that their pastors are better than the average person, right? That their church members, they want to believe that their pastor's marriage is always strong, that their faith never wavers. Essentially, they live without sin, right? They don't struggle, they don't doubt, they don't question. They always pray. They like everybody. They love going to church every week. Like, that's what people want to believe. And as I said last week, I'd like to tell you all that's true, but it's not. At least it's not for me. And if, as Chris mentioned, you're joining us for the first time today, or if you missed the beginning of this series last week for one reason or another, this is Confessions of This Pastor. It's going to be an honest look at this pastor's heart. And this series, and through this series, I'm going to share some things, share a lot of different things. I'm going to share some things that I struggle with, some things that I question. In this series, I'm going to share some things, my fears, my doubts. This is going to be real and as raw as it gets. It's not going to be reverent or religious. And so I'm just going to ask you to continue to give me grace as I did last week. I'm going to ask you to continue to give me grace as we look at the scriptures together and discover what God has to say. Not to you. This is not for you. This is about me and this is for me. So please have grace as we kind of look at what the scriptures, what the Lord has to say to me through them. And last week we began this series again. If you, as Chris mentioned, you missed it, you know, you can always go back and take it in, and I encourage you to do that. But last week we began this series by talking about the reality. The confession I made was that I feel completely inadequate to be a pastor. Not just a pastor, I should have put your pastor. I feel completely inadequate to be your pastor. And I shared that with you last week, and so many of you, some of you at home, some of you in this room, you were so quick to grab me after the service, to encourage me. Some of you sent me social media messages. I got some emails. I got some text messages through the week. So many of you were so quick and so gracious to just encourage and to try to uplift me. And honestly, that means more to me than you, I promise you, than you will ever know. But it wasn't a ploy to like, oh, I need everybody to tell me how great I am. Like, that wasn't the point of it. But really, the thing that I was most thankful for is really the hope for this whole series was that so many of you not only emailed me to try to encourage me or affirm me, but so many of you reached out to share the areas in your life, to confess the areas in your life that you feel completely inadequate. I was really amazed by how many, shared in some way or in some arena of your life, the areas that you feel inadequate. And I think I'm so thankful for that. It's such a beautiful and powerful thing, this idea that when we gather together and we actually share, when we actually confess those things that are true in our lives, when we open up ourselves and become vulnerable, we hide in the shadows because we think it's actually going to make things worse. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. When we begin to share those things, we feel this liberation. There's a freedom that comes from that. And so many of you felt like, man, you shared, so I'm going to share. And we began talking and having these conversations, and we realized suddenly church isn't just a program. And church isn't a service you attend or a building you walk into. All of a sudden, something begins to happen, and all of a sudden, we begin to be encouraged and feel the Lord's presence. It's just this beautiful thing that happens. And for those of you that it has, I'm so thankful. And for the rest of you that haven't yet, I just hope that throughout this series, as I share some things with you, that maybe it'll bring you to a place where you feel comfortable sharing something with me or maybe with somebody else. That's the hope. And so today, we're going to continue on in this series, knowing that I feel completely inadequate to be your pastor. I'm going to continue on and share today. And the confession that I want to make today is, honestly, it's a really difficult one to admit or to confess, especially as a pastor. This week, I talked to a few of my friends who were in ministry, and I shared what I'm going to share. I shared what I'm going to share with you with them, and they were like, yeah, but and they felt it too, but it was kind of this idea, it's like, I don't know if you should go public with that confession, but we're being real, we're being raw, and we're being honest, and so I'm going to do it. As difficult as this is to admit and to confess to you, I have to confess that as a pastor, I question the sovereignty of God. I question the sovereignty of God, this idea that God is in complete control. I wrestle with that. I struggle with that. Not all the time, not always, but there have been moments in my life, more than I can count, and certainly more than I'd like to admit, there have been moments where I question that God is in control. I question that God is sovereign. Just to give us a little bit of a foundation, or to give you some, kind of some understanding as to what I mean when I refer to this sovereignty of God. One theologian named John Piper puts God's sovereignty this way, and I love how he puts it. He says, God's sovereignty is his right and his power to do all that he decides to do. That's what it means to say that God is sovereign. It's his right and his power to do all that he decides to do. And while that sounds good, I have to admit that so many times in my life as a man and as a pastor, I have called into question that sovereignty, that control, because so much of what God does, so much of what God decides to do or decides not to do, it doesn't make any sense to me. Right? I don't understand it. I don't understand what he's doing. I don't understand why he does certain things, why he allows certain things, why he doesn't stop certain things. And I just don't understand him. I don't understand it at all. And see, there's so many times in my life, I think the most difficult part of being a pastor, I really believe this, I've thought a lot about it. I think the most difficult part of being a pastor is that as a pastor, you see everything. I've been doing this thing for 23 years, and in those 23 years, I've seen it all. It is a gift that you as church people give me to walk through and go through life with you, to walk alongside you, to try to shepherd you, encourage you, lead you, pray with you, pray for you, to see God bring victory in your life. It's a gift that you give me. But as I walk with you, I have walked through so much with so many people that over 23 years as a pastor, as walking through, you walk through everything, you see everything. And the more I see, though I believe in my head and believe in my heart that God is sovereign, the more I see, the more at times in my life I question, God, are you really in control? Are you really sovereign? I remember a few years ago, I was driving in the car with my wife, Lisa, and the phone rang. I answered the phone, and it was a dear friend of mine. I've known him for years. We've been through a lot together over those years. And he called me, and I could barely make out. I knew it was him. And really the only reason I knew it was him because his voice came up, or his name came up on my phone, because I couldn't even recognize his voice. He was sobbing uncontrollably on the other end of the phone. He didn't say, how are you doing? He didn't say where he was. He was just calling, and I could barely make out his voice through all the blubbering. And finally, he began to slow down long enough to tell me why he called. He told me that he and his wife, another dear friend of mine, they got in a really bad fight. Such a bad fight that she stormed out of the house in anger, got in the car, and took off and never came back. She never came back. The police showed up at his door, and they said, your wife has been in a horrible accident. He went to the hospital where he was when he called me, and he begged me, Scott, I need you to pray for her. I need you to pray. I need you to pray for her. I need you to pray for me. I need you to pray for our two beautiful children. I need you to pray. She's literally on life support. Scott, I need you to pray. He was begging, so we prayed. And I continue to pray, God, spare her life. God, do a miracle. And he didn't. And today, I find myself praying for Lisa's grandmother. Lisa's grandparents, her grandfather was a pastor, and together this wonderful couple served the Lord faithfully. They served the Lord, they served the church for literally longer than I've been alive. A few years ago, Lisa's grandfather passed away, and today Lisa's grandmother is in her 90s. She's isolated, She's alone, and literally every single day she prays and she begs God, take me home. And he hasn't. And I don't understand that. I don't understand how God would take a life that had so much life to live and not take a life that is begging to go home after living so many years. So I don't understand that. I don't understand what's going on. I don't understand what God's thinking, and it calls into question, God, are you really in control? Because if you are, what is and what isn't happening, what you're allowing and what you're not doing, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And see, I've seen so many things over the years as a pastor. So many things, and I prayed about it all. And the more I pray, the more at times I've questioned, because the more I see or the more that doesn't happen, no matter how hard I pray, I just kind of call into question, God, what are you doing? I question. You may not be a pastor, but maybe you question as well. You question, you wouldn't call it the sovereignty of God. You might not use that term, but you question. You don't know maybe what you're questioning, but you certainly know who you're questioning. That there are times in all of our lives, and if this hasn't happened to you yet, good news, it's coming. But there are times in our lives, there are seasons of our lives, there are circumstances that happen that are out of our control. Some of them are in our control, but we find ourselves praying, we find ourselves questioning, wondering what's going on. And you know, the interesting thing about the way in the times that we question, I've never met anybody who questions God when things are good. You ever notice that? I've never met anybody who prays and asks the Lord, why did my parents never divorce? Lord, I just don't understand why my kids are so healthy or why I still have my job. Nobody questions when things are good. But it's when the phone rings unexpectedly. It's when the doctor gives you that report you didn't see coming. It's when you have a conversation with your child or your grandchild. It's where something all of a sudden happens and we find ourselves in a situation, we find ourselves in a circumstance, we find ourselves in a season of life where something happens or doesn't happen that isn't just a part of our lives, it's bigger than life. And we don't know what to do. We don't know where to go. We don't know where to turn. And so we find ourselves questioning. And I have to tell you, I have to confess that as a man, as a pastor, I know it's irreverent to say this. I know it's irreverent to confess this, but I have questioned the sovereignty of God. And the reason I share that with you isn't just to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's to let you know. And as I share this, I want to share with you what God has been sharing and showing me. And what I want you to know is today, if you have or if you are questioning God's sovereignty, if you are wondering where he is or what he's doing or why he hasn't done something or if he's ever going to do something, I want you to know what God is showing me. And it's that our questioning God, your questioning God, my questioning God is not an indictment on our faith. In fact, it may actually be the evidence of our faith. And more than that, it could actually be the very thing that God uses, believe it or not, to deepen our faith. To show you what I mean today, I want to bring you to the scriptures as we always try to do, and I want to bring you to a moment in Jesus' life. A moment in Jesus' life where he puts on display, full display, the sovereignty of God. And it happens in a moment in his life that you've probably heard about, maybe even read about before. In fact, this story that we're going to look at is so common, it is so familiar that you may actually just jump to the end and tune me out and kind of, because you know how the story ends, you might just go, oh yeah, whatever. But what I want you to do, because this story is so famous and familiar, I want to ask you to do what I've often asked you to do, and that's just to slow your mind. First of all, don't fall asleep. Secondly, just slow your mind down as we look at this story and experience this story together with the characters. And the reason that I ask you to do that is because you know how the story ends. You may miss what the story has to say to you. Because every single one of us, if you know this story, we have a luxury that they didn't have. See, we get to read a story, but they had to live it. They had to live this story. They, in this moment, are like you in yours. And as we look at this story together, here's what we discover, and this is really uncomfortable. This is, in fact, for some of you, this is going to create a brand new category in your theology. And it's an uncomfortable category. It's this category that may actually leave you, unfortunately, with more questions than it does answers to questions, which you're like, oh, good, that's what I really came to church for. But here in this situation, we find Jesus. Jesus doesn't just step into an uncomfortable situation. In this moment, Jesus doesn't just step into, a painful set of circumstances. In this moment, Jesus actually, believe it or not, Jesus creates a painful experience. He doesn't just allow it to happen. He actually causes it to happen. And just saying that in and of itself is probably making some of us push back. I don't like saying it at all. I don't like saying to you that we're gonna look at a moment in Jesus' life where he creates a painful, tragic circumstance in the life of people that he loves. I have a hard time with that, but that's what happened. And the gospel writer John tells us about it this way. He says, now a man named Lazarus was sick, and immediately you're like, oh, I know this one. I remember this one. Just hang with me. Don't fall asleep and just hang with me. This is how the story begins. He, meaning Lazarus, he was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. These three characters that are introduced here, they are close friends of Jesus. There's a unique relationship between Jesus and these characters. He knew their names. He had been in their home. He had eaten with them. They had supported him financially. These people are people that Jesus cares deeply about. So these sisters, when Lazarus became sick, these sisters, they did exactly what you and I do. They sent word to Jesus. Now we call it prayer, right? We were in those moments, something happens, something doesn't happen. What do? We pray and we tell Jesus what we think he doesn't know. You ever notice that? Isn't that weird about prayer? Like God knows everything, but we tell him it's like a secret. I don't know if you knew, but it's just a weird thing we do. But he begins, and they send word, and this is exactly what they do. They send word. They don't pray. They actually got a messenger. Jesus is 2, 3, maybe 4 days away on foot. And they send a message through this messenger. Go find him and give him this message for us. This is the message that this messenger carried. Lord, the one you love, not the one you like, not the one that you know. No, Lord, the one you love is sick. This is so dramatic. This isn't Lord, Lazarus is sick. This is Lord, the one that you love is sick. That these two sisters, they knew that all they had to do was arm this messenger with this message, and immediately they would know, Jesus would know who is being talked about because of who the message came from. That Jesus would automatically know that they were talking about Lazarus because they described him as the one that he loved. Now here's the thing, Jesus had healed many people, many people, many strangers. He had healed many people that he had never even been in their presence. Some healed people that he'd met only once. Some people he was never even with them. He just spoke the word and they were healed. So of course, these two sisters, when their brother becomes sick, of course, they sent for this one that could do the incredible thing that they desperately wanted to see happen in his life and in their lives. Now, John goes on to tell us more about this story, and this is where, unfortunately, it creates a really uncomfortable category for you, and certainly for me. The story goes on. When he, meaning Jesus, when he heard this, when he got the message, when the messenger arrived and he read, I don't know what he read, but it was basically in front of him, it said, Lord, the one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. This is a bold proclamation, and I need you to hold on to these words for just a few moments. This sickness will not end in death. No, he says, it is for God's glory, purpose statement, so that. This is for God's glory. This is not for Lazarus's good. Don't get this twisted. Don't mistake this. This isn't for Lazarus's good. This is for God's glory, purpose statement, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. And this is where Jesus creates a new category, and the category is this: sickness, illness, disease, death. All of that can be for God's glory, to which I say, I don't think so. Got to convince me of that one. See, I like the kind of glory where something really good happens in my life and I get to say, oh, that wasn't me, that was God. To God be the glory. Like, I like that kind of thing. And Jesus says, well, yeah, that's all right. But there's another way. In fact, there's a better way, and the way is this, where something really, really negative is introduced into your life, and God says, not only am I gonna allow that, in some cases, I'm gonna cause that, and I'm gonna leverage that for my glory. I'm a pastor. I am an ordained minister. I can marry you and bury you. And I struggle with this. I really, really struggle with this. Not only am I gonna allow it, in some cases, I'm gonna cause it, and I'm gonna leverage it for my glory. That's what's happening in this moment. And see, what's happening is what Jesus is telling us in this moment, with this category that he's creating is an uncomfortable one. And see, what Jesus is saying in this moment without saying it is he's telling me, and unfortunately he's telling you, he's describing this tension that we all feel. It's this tension that, see, every single one of us in this room has a story. You have a story, I have a story. And in our stories, we are the main characters, right? You are the main character in your story, and you love your story, and God knows your story. But see, here's the thing. We are the main characters in our story, but not the story. We are characters. We are the main characters in our story, but not these. There is another story. There is a bigger story. There is a broader narrative. And while we have been invited into that story, we are not the main characters in that story. It's his story. It's God's story. And it's a story of how he has a plan to redeem his creation back to its original design. And see, my problem is maybe your problem. In the midst of my story, in the midst of walking through your story with you, I have a really difficult time connecting the dots between certain things that happen or don't happen and any possible good that can come out of it. It is a real challenge for me in the midst of some of the things I've seen you walk through or some of the things you're walking through right now to try to be able to prescribe some sort of good that could possibly come out of this. I look at it and I'm like trying to connect the dots. God, what glory could you possibly get out of this that's worth this happening in their lives? I can't see it, and I certainly can't sell it. It's tough. And see, even on the other side of certain things that I've seen happen in life, I still struggle and wrestle to find the good that's coming out of it. I still wrestle to find the glory that God may get out of it. And I don't know if you've wrestled with that, but as a pastor, I have to confess to you, I do. I wrestle with that. And in case you missed it the first time, John is in the middle of this situation. This is all unfolding before his very eyes, and he writes about it to you and to me. He didn't know we were going to read it, which is a fun fact. But anyway, John's writing all this down. He wants to remind us, he says this, Jesus loved, don't miss it, Jesus loved Martha and her sister. I love that the sister is kind of like, and the sister, right? It's like, love Martha and the sister and Lazarus. Like Mary doesn't even get really mentioned, but loves Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Like, don't miss this. There is, as you read this story, there is a unique relationship between Jesus and this family. Don't miss it. This isn't just some family that he met one day. This is a family. He knows their names. He knows where they live. He's been in their homes. He's sat down at their table and broken bread with them. They have supported him financially. Like, there is a special relationship. There is a unique dynamic that goes beyond the average relationship. So, in light of that, John tells us, so when Jesus heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. He did the exact opposite of what you and I would expect him to do. And see, this is one of the reasons that I believe that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels, the 4 books that chronicle the life, ministry, death, and resurrection of Jesus, this is one of the main reasons that I believe they're actually historical accounts. Because if you were writing fiction to get people to love and follow Jesus, you wouldn't write this. Because everything about this is just wrong, isn't it? Everything about this is infuriating. Everything about this wants us to push back. This is not the Jesus that we like to sing about. This is not the Jesus we like to believe in. We push back from this. Everything about this strikes you just as wrong, 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 wrong. Jesus gets word, not that someone somewhere is sick. Jesus gets word that Lazarus, the one he loves, is sick. And upon getting the news, upon hearing the message, he says, thanks a lot for the information, and sends him on his way. The disciples start packing their bags thinking, well, he loves Lazarus. We must be going back to Judea. And Jesus says, whoa, what do you guys think you're doing? Sit back down. We're not going anywhere. And for 2 days, he did nothing. And you felt like that in your life, I guarantee you, haven't you? God, where are you? God, do you know? God, do you care? God, I need you. God, what's going on? I need you to, God, show up. I need you. I'll do whatever I do. Like, I got to get the change in the machine the right way, kick it a few times to get what it is I want. God, I said the prayer. God, I claimed that verse. God, I prayed that you're working in all things for the good that love. Like, I've done all these things. I'm trying. I've sang the song 3 times. Like, I've done everything I know to do. Where are you? I need you to show up. I need you to bring them back. I need you to heal him. I need you to get me a job. God, I need you to fix my kid. God, where are you? What are you doing? Nothing. You see, in my head and in my heart, I believe that God is sovereign, and I believe that God is in control. But I gotta confess, the nothing makes me question. The nothing makes me question. Maybe it makes you question. It certainly made Mary and Martha question. After 2 days of allowing this, 2 days while there's no activity, 2 days while Mary and Martha suffer, 2 days while Mary and Martha watch their brother die, 2 days while Martha stands at the end of the road while Mary's looking after Lazarus, and then they switch turns and one's looking after Lazarus and the other one is standing at the edge of the road. Have you seen Jesus? 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 Have you seen the disciples? We sent word. We know we got the word. The messengers come back. Has anybody seen Jesus? After 2 days, they're watching for Jesus, waiting for Jesus while they're watching their brother die. And then after 2 days of allowing these people he loved to go through this pain, then Jesus said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. Let's go back to Judea. Like, this must have been really confusing to the disciples in light of what Jesus says next. He says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. And their disciples are like, he's fallen. How does he know that he's fallen asleep? I don't know how he knows he's fallen. That's just Jesus. He's weird like that. He just knows things. I don't know how Jesus says, I'm going back to wake him up. And the disciples are like, wake him up. Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Like, this is great news. If he's sleeping, that means the fever has broken and he's resting peacefully. He's going to get better. This is great news. We don't need to go back, but Jesus had been speaking of his death. But his disciples thought that he meant natural sleep. It's so interesting. So many times, go back there for a second. So many times I think Jesus says one thing to us and we hear something completely different. That's a sermon for another day. But the point is right now, Jesus is trying to communicate to his disciples and they're not getting the message. So Jesus had to speak plainly and he says, Lazarus is dead. Lazarus is dead? What? You just said he was like, Like, how do you know I don't know how he does this. How does he know this? He just said he was, and see, now all of a sudden they're thinking, wait a minute. He's dead? Jesus, 10 verses ago, 2 days ago, you said that this sickness wouldn't end in death. And now you're telling us he's dead? See, now there's all kinds of confusion. Now there's all kinds of drama. Now there's all kinds of questions. Jesus, you love Lazarus, you love Mary, you love Martha. They've done everything they could for us. And you got word, you got the message that Lazarus was sick. And instead of us rushing back to Judea, you sat us back down here and we've done nothing for 2 days. And now you tell us he's dead? I mean, they had questioned Jesus before. They had been confused by Jesus before. But imagine the thoughts that are going through their mind in this moment right now. They don't know how the story ends. Imagine the whispers. Imagine the questions they're asking each other as they walk and make their way back to Judea. Days later, Martha sees Jesus in the distance and she goes running out to him and she falls at his feet and she says to Jesus what you've said to God, even if you're not a Christian or a religious person. In some way, shape, or form, I'm guessing you've said something like this to God in your own way. Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus, this is your fault. This is your fault. I've seen you heal strangers. I've seen you heal people that weren't even in your presence. Jesus, I've seen you heal people that didn't even deserve it. Jesus, I heard a story that a Roman centurion, I can't even believe I'm saying those two words with my own mouth. A Roman centurion, the enemies of Rome, the enemies of God, a Roman centurion who represents a government we despise. He came to you with his servant and he asked you to heal his servant. You didn't know him, you didn't know his name, and you healed him, and you wouldn't show up for Lazarus, the one that you love? This is your fault. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Jesus, if you'd been here, I wouldn't have had to watch my brother die. If you had been here, I wouldn't have to answer all the questions from all the people who say, where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? I thought he was your friend. See, it's not simply the fact that I had to watch him die. Jesus, I had to watch him die knowing that you weren't coming. Jesus, I had to watch him die knowing if you'd been here, this wouldn't have happened. But, and this is amazing, but I know, which means I believe, I trust that even now God will give you whatever I ask, whatever you ask. Martha looked at Jesus and she said, I've been watching and here's what I know. As broken as my heart is right now, as angry as I am right now, I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. God will give you whatever you ask, which is why I called for you when Lazarus got sick. And Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Oh, don't give me one of those churchy cliches. I know. And then she reaches into her theology box and she pulls out something that every Jew believed. I know that he will rise again in the resurrection in the last day. Oh, I know, Jesus, I know this story. I know we say it all the time that we're all gonna be together again one day, right? I know. He's in a better place. I know there's going to be a resurrection and the dead in Christ are going to rise first and everything's going to work out and he's in a better place and we're all going to be together again and Moses is going to be there and Abraham and Isaac and we're all going to be running around streets of gold collecting autographs from all of our Old Testament heroes. Like, I get it. I know all this is going to happen. It's not that I don't believe in a resurrection, Jesus. It's just, and then Jesus cuts her off and he says to her, I am the resurrection and I am the life. Yeah, you're right. You're right that even now God will give me whatever I ask, but it's so much bigger than that. And yes, you're right that I'm a teacher who has come from God, but it's so much bigger than that. Yes, I'm a miracle worker and I could have saved your brother, but it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that, and it's so important and it's so relevant to everything that I'm about. This is so important for you right now in this moment, but it's important for people who are going to live hundreds and thousands of years from now. I am personally the embodiment of, I am the resurrection and I am the life. And friends, you don't make a statement like that without backing it up. And that's exactly what this moment was about. Jesus was in complete control, even though to her it seemed like he wasn't. And Jesus looks at Martha and he says, I'm about to make a statement. I'm about to drop the mic. I'm about to make a claim I haven't made until now. I am the resurrection. I am the life. And whoever believes in me will live even though he dies, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She wanted answers, and he's the one asking the questions. Do you believe this? This is about you, Martha. This is about your faith. This is about your confidence in me. And what lengths am I willing to go to deepen that faith, to deepen that confidence? I'm willing to go to this length. I'm willing to go to that length, to which you might say, I'm not comfortable with that. I get it, believe me. I'm a pastor and I'm not comfortable with it either. But that's what Jesus said and that's what Jesus did. It's the preeminent way of honoring God to say, I believe and I trust, even though I have very little to hang that belief and that trust on. And I gotta tell you, I gotta confess to you, I struggle with this. I struggle with this. I wrestle with this. And Jesus looked at Martha and he says, do you believe this? And she said, yes, Lord. Deep breath. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who was to come into the world. And Jesus, with tears streaming down her face, Jesus, I believe that, even though you let my brother die. I believe that, even though you didn't come. I believe that, even though you didn't answer my prayer. I believe that despite all the ridicule and all the scorn I've received from all the people that surrounded me, who mocked me openly because I said you would come because you were my friend. Jesus, I have very little to hang this belief on, but I still believe. Wow. Then Jesus did the strangest thing. Jesus looked at Mary and Martha and he said, have your servants move the stone. The stone? What? Jesus, you're not just fashionably late, like you're really late, like 4 days late, like we put that stone there 4 days ago, move it. And Jesus, yeah, I know, just have to move the stone. Imagine the drama. Remember, they don't know the story. They're in the middle of this. And Jesus says, move the stone. There's all this drama. What in the world is he doing? Why in the world is he doing this? And they move the stone. And Jesus, he's asking to be taken to the grave. He walks up there. He stands at this grave. And then the shortest verse in the Bible, in the most confusing of scenes, Jesus wept. I love this verse. Fun fact, this is actually my favorite verse in the whole Bible. Mainly because it's the easiest one to memorize. But I love this verse. And the reason I love this verse so much is because here's the tension. Here's the clash. Here's the world we live in. Jesus, the miracle worker. Jesus, the resurrection in the life. Jesus, who knows what he's about to do and why he's about to do it. He doesn't just rush in and perform a miracle. Oh, no. He stops and he pauses. He pauses to feel exactly what Martha and Mary had been feeling. Exactly what you felt when you stood over the grave of loved ones. Exactly what you felt when God didn't come through for you. Exactly what you felt when God didn't answer your prayer, when that relationship wasn't restored or reconciled, when your kid went wayward. Exactly what you felt when things didn't work out the way you planned or the way you expected. Exactly what all of us have felt, and still somehow we say we believe and we trust that you are in control, even though it seems like you're not. It's as if Jesus pauses. And the reason that I love this verse so much, the reason that it's my favorite verse is not because it's short, it's because it's so powerful. Because in these two words, we get a glimpse into the humanity of Jesus. And he models to you and he models to me that believing it will all work out in the end, believing that God is in control, it doesn't eliminate the need for grief when it seems as though he isn't. Jesus didn't just believe that God was in control. He knew that God was in control. And he still wept. Because believing and trusting that God is in control, knowing that God is in control, doesn't remove and it doesn't make it irreverent to question and to grieve when it seems in the moment that he's not. And Jesus paused and he stood there. And it's as if he says to you, and it's as if he says to me, you know what? I understand how that feels. I grieve with you. I grieve like you. I know. He asks them to move the stone. It's such an odd thing. It's such a strange thing. It's such a bizarre thing for him to ask. And I think all of this, it's not just for their benefit. It's for your benefit. It's for my benefit. And the Bible tells us that Jesus then prayed an odd prayer. He looked up to heaven, and this is my own version of the prayer. You can read it for yourself later. It's fun. But Jesus basically looked up to heaven. He said, hey, God, you know what I'm about to do, and I know what I'm about to do. And I'm just looking, praying right now because I want everybody around to see that you and I have this connection. I don't want them to think somehow mistakenly that I'm doing any of this on my own. I want them to know that I'm here to do your will and your will alone. So are they all looking right now? I'm not going to look around, but are they? Yeah, they're looking. Okay, so have we done this long enough? We're good to proceed? Okay. And then Jesus said, Lazarus, and I don't know if he yelled it. I don't know if he whispered it. Like, I don't know if they had to lean in. Like, what did he just say? I don't know how he said it. All I know is that he said, Lazarus, come forth. And then the Bible said, better yet, Mary and Martha say, John says, the other gospel writers say, the eyewitnesses say that Lazarus came out of that tomb alive. And if in that moment there was any doubt in their minds or in our minds as to whether or not Jesus is the resurrection and the life, or that Jesus was sovereign and in control, if all the loopholes in that argument were shut down in that moment, and right then, therefore, in light of what happened, in light of what they saw, therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did, they put their faith in him. And see, here's the thing. Jesus didn't just show up in the midst of a painful situation or circumstance. He created one. He created one on purpose so that the purpose statement we saw, so that people would believe in him, which they did. So that God might be glorified in what was about to happen, which it was. But see, here's the thing, and I'm begging you, just stay with me for a few more moments. This is so important. And if you don't take anything else, don't read right over this because it's so easy to do. It's so easy to miss the whole point of what Jesus is trying to show me as a pastor and you as well. Don't miss this. God was glorified. But Martha believed before he did anything. Martha believed before he did anything. Martha trusted that God was sovereign and that he was in control before Jesus showed her just how sovereign and in control he was. God is so honored by your trust. God is so honored by your belief, even though everything around you gives you reason not to. God is so honored by that. And that's why I want to confess this. It's why I want to lead us to be a church, to be a community that will reframe your pain for you, not to excuse God, but to help you understand and explain that God understands this. God understands this. That the challenges, the pain, they're not exceptions, they're part of the story. Pain is not evidence or against God. Tragedy isn't proof of anything. Pain and tragedy are part of the story. And Jesus shows us in this story that they are an important part of the bigger story. And the problem is I have such a difficult time seeing that and accepting that in the midst of the story. And that's why I want to lead us. I want to continue to try to lead us to be a community that will frame the challenging circumstances and the difficult seasons of life in a proper way. And we'll come alongside and say, we're not going to try to explain this. We're not going to try to attach meaning and purpose to this, but you can still believe and you can still trust that God is sovereign and in control, even though everything that is or isn't happening in your life would tell you that he's not. And what I want you to know before you go today, as I make this confession to you, I make it not so you'll feel bad for me or question whether or not I should be your pastor. I've given you enough reasons by now. The reason I say this is because I want you to walk away knowing that your questioning God is not an indictment on your faith. Your questioning God could actually be the very evidence of your faith. And it could actually be the very thing that God uses to deepen your faith. And the reason I tell you that from my heart is because I've lived it. 12 years ago, everything I had, everyone I had, everything I was, it was all gone. I had no one and I had nothing. It was the darkest point in my life. I was literally at a crossroads in my faith and a crossroads in my life. I was at a place where I was ready to walk away, not just from faith, but I was at a place where I was ready to walk away from my life. I was all alone in the living room of my house, and I was angry, and I was giving God the business. I was telling him everything, the top of my lungs. If anybody had walked in, I don't know what they would have thought. If anybody had walked by my house, I don't know what they would have thought, but I didn't care. All I wanted God to know was what I thought of him. Where are you? I've been doing this thing with you for 10 years. Where are you? I've tried to do everything you've told me to do. I've prayed the prayers. I've quoted the scripture. I've tried to take responsibility and accountability for the things in my life that I need to. I've tried to make things right. I've tried to fix everything. I've tried. But God, you said that you love me. God, you said that you have a plan. God said that you have plans for me to prosper me and not to harm me, plans to give me a hope in the future. You say that you work in all things for good that love them. Well, then where are you? Because nothing's changing and nothing's happening. And I can't do this much more or much longer. So God, what's the deal? Where are you? I was so angry. I was so angry. Where are you? You know what? I don't even care anymore. In fact, God, you know what? I don't believe in you anymore. No sooner did those words come out of my mouth than a hush come over my home and over my heart. And as audible as I've ever heard the voice of God, if I've ever heard it audibly in my life, I heard it in that moment. And I heard the voice of God say, well, then who are you yelling at? That's a mic drop if I've ever heard one. In that moment, my anger was my evidence, not just of the existence of God. My anger was the evidence of the presence of God, because my anger was directed at him. Not at my ceiling, not at some my anger was directed at him. And see, the thing is, my questioning the sovereignty of God is directed at someone. My questioning is directed at him. Martha questioned Jesus. You've questioned Jesus. I've questioned Jesus. The issue isn't whether or not he exists. The issue isn't whether or not he's real or present. The issue isn't even whether or not he's sovereign or in control. The issue is that what he has decided to do or not do in that sovereignty and control doesn't make sense to us. And Jesus in this moment makes it all too clear that when that happens in your life, your questioning him isn't an indictment on your faith. It doesn't prove that he's not real. It shows that he is. Your issue is my issue, even though I'm a pastor. It's that what he does and doesn't do doesn't make any sense. And Jesus wants you to know that God is big enough for those questions. In fact, he begs you to ask them, because it's in that moment that your faith it isn't abstract anymore. It becomes deeply, deeply personal. Jesus didn't just meet Martha at the end of that road. He met her at the crossroads of her faith. He met her at the honesty of her questions, and their relationship went deeper, and so did her faith. And so, if I have any advice for you as we close out this time together, if I have any advice for you, it's simply this. If you're in the midst of a painful circumstance in your life, if you're fighting a battle you can't see a way to win, If you're in the middle of a circumstance or a season of your life that you don't see any way out of, if you can't see a light at the end of the tunnel, if you can't even get a fingertip on the ledge of hope, if you don't see a way out, if you don't see a way forward, if you find yourself so disappointed with God where you're saying, God, do you even know? God, do you even care? If that's where you find yourself today, I have a simple piece of advice for you. And I try to hold on to it myself. Would you add to your prayers? Because I know that you've prayed. Even if you're not a Christian, even if you wouldn't call yourself a religious person, you've prayed. So would you add to your prayers of, Lord, I need you. God, I need you to show up. God, I need you to fix this. God, I need you to heal her. I need you to bring him back. God, I need a job. God, I need you to fix my kid. Whatever your prayers are, would you just add this to your prayer? God, I need to see you in this. God, I need to see you in this. God, I need to see you in that. God, I don't need you to just change everything, though I'd like you to, but God, I need you to change the way I see this. Because if I can see you in this, then I know there's hope. God, if I can somehow see you in this, then I know there's an end. And God, if I can see you in this, then I know that there's grace to be sustained. God, if I can somehow see you in this, I won't give up hope. Because if I can see you in this, see, I want to emerge from this, and you know what this is for you. God, I want to emerge from this with deeper faith, not less faith. And God, I don't even know if that's possible, but if it is, God, I need to see you. I need to see you in this. The struggles, the tragedies, the hurdles, the pain, the losses, they're not exceptions. They're part of the story. And Jesus showed us they're an all too important part of the story. Unfortunately, we don't get to sign up for this. God chooses and God uses. Our responsibility is how we are going to respond in these moments where we question. And Jesus wants you to know it's okay to question, because your question is directed at him. And he wants you to know that your question is actually your evidence that deep down you know he's there. And he wants to walk through that tension and that question with us not understanding what he's actually doing and why we can't seem to not only understand it, but accept it. He wants to meet you there. He's met me there, and he continues to meet me there. And so as we close, I want you to just bow your heads and bow your hearts. For those of you at home, cottages, wherever you are, whenever this is for you, wherever, just whoever you're with, bow your head, bow your heart. Closing our eyes, bowing our heads, it's mystical. It's not what makes prayer work. It's just simply a way of eliminating distractions. And I just want to invite you, whatever this is for you, would you just in your own way and in your own words, just, God, I confess, I question. And God, I need to see you in this. Just tell him, I've confessed to you. I invite you to confess to him. God, I need to see you in this. Oh, Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for giving me the privilege to be in this moment and this opportunity to speak from your word and to share my heart. And hopefully, God, you've had the opportunity to speak to the hearts of your people. And God, you know every story. You know every question. And God, I pray right now that your Holy Spirit is speaking to each one in a deeply intimate way. Just as you met Martha at that place in her life, I believe that you're meeting with people in theirs. And God, I just pray for each one of them that God, in their own way, in their own journey, in their own struggle, in their own fears, in their own uncertainties and challenges, in the midst of all the questions and the lack of understanding and the lack of answers, God, would you show them that you are present, that God, you do know and that you do care. And would you help them to hold on to you as you help them see you in this. Before we go, I'm going to ask every one of you with us in the room, those of you at home, you're welcome to do this as well, but would you all stand with me? would you stand with me? And together, I want to invite you to join me and join my dear friend Emily, who is going to lead us in a song that I just believe is going to be a way that we can together with one heart sing a prayer. It says, God, when you speak and when you move, it changes us. It changes what we see, and it changes what we seek. And may we be a people that say, no matter what is or isn't happening in our lives, God, I need to see you in this. Let's sing together.
Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we want to know you more and more, hanging on every word. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we only want to hear your voice, hanging on every word. Speak to us, Lord. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we only wanna hear your voice. We're hanging on every word. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we wanna know you more and more. We're hanging on every word. 'Cause when you speak, when you move, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. When you come in the room, when you do what only you can do, it changes us, it changes what we see and what we see. It changes everything. Spirit of the living God, Spirit of the living God, we're leaning into all you are, everything changes what we see and what we see when you come in the room. When you do what only you can do, it changes us. It changes what we see and what we see. Changes everything. Spirit of the living God, whirling into all you are. Everything else can wait.
Well, that didn't apply to anybody, did it? He's usually pretty good. That's one of the things I love about this church. We're not big on formalities around here. It's just real people wrestling through real things together. That's what this church is about. I hope you'll join us next week as we continue on this series. Join us for week 3 of Confessions of a Pastor. Bring your friend, bring a neighbor, bring family, even though it probably won't apply to you. It'd be great to have you. Till then, God bless. Have an awesome week.